Good morning, and thank you so much for joining for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Buckchester. You know what I want to do on my show? I want to enlighten, inspire, and empower you to become your best self. Now, the tongue is a small thing that makes grand speeches, but a tiny spark can set a great forest on fire. And I know that I am fired up not only about Holy Scripture saying that, but about my guest today. Her name is Nadia Boujelloun, and we are talking about her book, Vigilant Mind. Now, please excuse my raspy voice today, but I am going to talk a little less. But first, I want to tell you a little bit more about Nadia. Nadia is from Tangier, Morocco, and she graduated from the American School of Tangier in 2017. She is a novelist, a poet, and essayist. She has had numerous works published in collections since her debut in 2010, and as of late has been featured or is a forthcoming feature in the Literary Yard, Eskimo Pie, Atmosphere Press, and the Scarlet Leaf Review. She is currently pursuing an undergraduate degree in Maine and is also an associate editor at Type House Literary Magazine. Now, you know what I'm going to say. Go on, get comfy, get cozy, get your coffee or get your tea, because we are about to get started. Good morning, Nadia. Thank you so much for being on Daily Spark with Dr. Angela today.
Good morning, Dr. Angela. Thank you for having me.
I'm so glad that you are here today. Now, I love the title of your book, but before we start talking about that, I want to ask a little bit more about who you are as a person. Now, I love what your essay, your bio says about all of the different styles of writing that in which you're able to express yourself and how you share with the world. But I want to ask you, did you know at a very young age that you wanted to be in the literary world? At what moment did you realize that words were your friends?
Yes, so I've always knew I liked writing ever since I was in grade school. But how I entered the literary path is actually kind of a funny story. Specifically in poetry, I never actually liked poetry growing up. I was more into the short genre and the novel. Then what happened to me was, as I was getting into middle school, I actually started a project where I started on this manuscript novella that I first until the start of high school. But one day what happened was, the laptop that I had at the time actually got a virus, and everything that I had on it got deleted with no backup. So I actually tried to refocus my creative energy elsewhere, and at the time I was learning about poetry in my English classes. You know, I was still a high school student. So I actually started practicing writing my own poetry and realized that, you know, literary writing really resonated with me, specifically poetry writing. And I received a lot of support from my mentors. So they actually they really pushed me down this path that led me to my first book, which turned out to be a collection of poetry. On that note, I would actually like to give a special message to any educators who might be listening and say that if there's any day that they feel like they lost their drive because either the education system failed them or out of personal circumstances, that what they do does have meaning, because I was still a student at the time, and it was because of my mentors that they made an impact on my literary career. So I would also say for the educators, what they're doing.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Now, with being an associate editor at Type House Literary Magazine, sometimes working for a magazine and working for a newspaper and versus a blog or your own PR or media firm, there's so many different ways in which we can communicate in the various styles. What is it like to be an associate editor?
It is a lot of fun for me the end for once rather than writer. I've learned of so many different styles from the submissions that I get, and I get to learn about the different kind of people that are out there. Especially with the magazine that I work with, we like to focus on underrepresented voices and unrepresented personalities. And I think being an editor really ties that all together, and you get to almost pass on the torch to somebody else. So being someone who really loves literature, as an editor, I get to help others engage in their writing and also contribute to the literary world.
I love it. Now, speaking of the literary world, I would love to talk about your book. Now, I tend to always ask all of the authors, which came first? Did the title of your book come to you first and you kind of wrote around the title? Or did you find that you were writing and the title came out of your writing?
I would say that the title came to me as I was writing, actually. So as it happens, this specific book, Vigilant Mind, has I have another anthology. This was my first Receptive Sentiments. And so the individual poems in this book, Vigilant Mind, are actually seen in the first book. So I would encourage readers to look up that first book to make sense of this writing. And I find that my writing has really evolved since that first collection. So what I do in these poems in Vigilant Mind, I ask my readers to consider an emotion, an idea, a theme, or a motive, a role, as food for thought. And to be able to digest all of that, to be able to register that in your mind, up with these follow-up questions and these thoughts, these feelings, be able to do all of that requires Vigilant Mind. So that's how I came up with that title.
I love it. I love it. Now, did you come from a literary background? For so many people, they find that it comes naturally to them because they've been, kind of submersed in the industry. What about you?
Well, in short, no, not traditionally. I'm actually a first-generation college student, and my family's professional background is in business. I'm the first of my siblings to be educated in the American system, but I also come from a multilingual and multicultural background. And my family are big supporters of education. So in that regard, that kind of was a stepping stone towards the literary path, but I did not traditionally come from a literary background.
Gotcha. Wow, and congratulations on being the college graduate. I love that. I think that so many times people take that for granted, or they just assume that everyone has achieved certain things. But it is always a blessing, no matter at what point the family is able to be elevated. That is a beautiful thing. Congratulations. Yay, you. That's awesome. That's awesome. Now,
Thank you.
How did you get started as a poet? Now, different question than, being the novelist or being the essayist. When you decided poetry, when did that start for you?
So like I mentioned earlier, I never was into poetry until I became a high school student. And it was because I felt really deprived from my writing at that point. And as all writers know, sometimes they face this huge writing block. It's almost kind of like a crisis that you hit when you hit a wall and you don't know what to write anymore. And I was learning about poetry for the first time, and I was learning about different kinds of poets. And I learned that in poetry, unlike prose, you can become really experimental in that writing. And there's this whole dimension, these new laws that, you can just break in poetry. And that really influenced me to become a poet, because that also reflected that stage of my life when I was a high school student, where, as teenagers, we look for new openings and different experimental ways and different angles of understanding life and just having a much more mature worldview. And I think just all of that coinciding at the same time, and also me looking for a new area to experiment my creativity, was what led me to become a poet.
So, Nadia, the next question I have for you is about influence. So many times we have people that have influenced us, either just like by encouraging us, by, empowering us or enlightening us in a way that, yes, I want to keep doing this. But then sometimes we have those people that inspire us and their light kind of reflects in what we do. So twofold question. Do you have any writers or poets that influence you with your writing style? Or do you have any writers or poets that have simply influenced you by encouraging you to keep walking in your path?
Yes. I've always liked Emily Dickinson and E.E. Cummings as writers, both of them because, first of all, people who know me tend to consider me to be someone who goes against the grain. And both of these writers, Emily Dickinson and E.E. Cummings, they were very non-traditional writers. For Emily Dickinson, it was in the sense that she was considered a morbid and reclusive person when, in fact, she was ahead of her time, and it just didn't fit that, the ideas, the norms of her society and her community at the time. And she used to write about social issues as an underrepresented voice, as a suppressed voice for that matter. As for E.E. Cummings, I really like him because he was also very experimental in his writing, and he broke the standard writing we knew of the time. He basically created his own linguistic form of poetry. So I really feel like I relate to the both of them.
It is so wonderful how people can really and truly influence us, and even if they're not around. So many times you think that a person has to be, present in your life day to day to be an influence on you, but certainly not. If someone has a positive effect on you, then that's what really matters. Well, it is time for us to go to break, but before we do, Nadia, if you could please, could you remind everyone what is the title of your book? Where can we pick up a copy? And how do we follow you online?
Yes. So the title of my book is Vigilant Mind, Poems and Other Shorts. And readers can find it on Barnes & Noble. They can order it online on Amazon. They can find it on Goodreads and any online store that sells books like it. Vigilant Mind is available in softcover and ebook format, and people can follow me on my Facebook page, Nadia Boujelloun.
Got it. All righty, listeners, now you know where you can pick up a copy of the book. We'll be back right after this. And we are back. Thank you so much for joining me for Daily Spark with Dr. Angela. I am your host, Dr. Angela Tester, and my guest today is Nadia Boujelloun, and we're talking about her book, Vigilant Mind. I am so excited to have her on with me today. Now, Nadia, I want to ask, who or what are the poems or short stories about in your book? Are they kind of personal stories? Are they kind of a spin on a personal event? Or is it just the creation and imagination of Nadia?
Yeah. So I would like to say that a rule of thumb that readers should remember when reading poetry is to not assume that the speaker of the poem is the author. So I would really say that it's really open-ended and more to the interpretation of the readers who or what the poems and even short stories about. So for this collection, I would say really it's up to the reader because I keep it very vague and ambiguous. So some of it could reflect like my personal life, but really it's up to the readers. They can position themselves in the stories and the poems, or they can find that it's about some other subject. Whatever it is, it's up to the readers.
I like that idea. It is up to the reader. I love it. Now, do you think that the internet in any way has contributed to the well-being of poetry today? Do you think that it has helped, it has hurt, or has it simply just maintained the same level of interest? What are your thoughts?
So that's a very good question. I think that it's a sword, right? So yes and no. Historically speaking, the literary arts was something that was reserved or exclusive to the aristocratic class. It was something, considered very elitist. It was a huge accomplishment to be educated and knowledgeable in the fine arts. So with the internet today and social media, I think that the good side to it is that anyone can have access to that knowledge and can participate and contribute to it. But the flip side to it, this is where the negatives are, is that it can also be mistreated. There's a lot, you can find language abuse, there is the risk of plagiarism, the spread of misinformation, and even, worst case scenario, the exposure to bigoted writing. So I would say, as with most things out there on the internet, there are always pros and cons.
That is so true. There always are some pros and cons. I like that. I like that perspective on it. Now, what do you do when you're not writing? For so many people, they have a side job or a day job, or they're like, yeah, my day job is I'm a mother of twins. Do you have something else that you do other than writing that you find just as much joy in?
So I attend classes because I'm still a full-time college student. So if I'm not writing, that's because I'm in class or doing homework. But on the side, what I like to do for fun when I want to take a break from the writing, I would write for fun, just have a jam writing session. It doesn't have to be structured, just put things down on paper, whatever it is. And when I'm having a more relaxed days, if I'm feeling lazy, I'll just watch movies or socialize with friends on the weekends. Just the typical doings of a 20-something.
Gotcha. I love how you are kind of creating a sense of balance for yourself. It's not just, it's not just, write. Because so many times we can be so passionate about something that we actually burn ourselves out. So I'm really glad that you're able to find that sense of balance. Now, for so many authors, they write according to a particular theme, or there's a message that they want to convey. That there's a tone that they want to make sure that they're in a particular mood, and they kind of write that mood. Getting back to Vigilant Mind, is there an overall theme that you wanted to write about? Was there a mood or a vibe that you wanted to create with your writing?
Yes, I think vibe is the right word for this rather than theme, because a lot of these poems are independent, connecting theme or vibe, as you say, that brings them all together. And I would say it's the idea that human nature is ubiquitous. We tend to think of ourselves in this dichotomous divide of similarities and differences. But in reality, there is this small bridge between the two, and that stems from our common humanity. And that's why I would say the overall theme for Vigilant Mind, the feeling that it will give you is just the sense of the ubiquity of human nature.
Now, I want to kind of shift gears just a little bit, and that is switch to your writing process. We have so many people that when they write into us, they say, we love the fact that you ask those questions for the person who is right on the line, the aspiring author, or the person that needs that just a little bit of extra advice to kind of help get them over the hurdle or through the bump. So that's kind of the vein or the line of questioning that I have for you for the next few questions. So my first question for you, Nadia, is when you're writing, have you found that you need a particular atmosphere or you need to be in a particular place? Like some people need it to be quiet, or they choose to kind of go off to themselves. They write at the beach, or some people want just enough noise like I'm going to Starbucks. What have you found is the perfect atmosphere for you to be productive?
So where the writing itself happens, I would say I need a quiet room. A lot of it happens during the idea productions and just brainstorming. This to go out on walks sometimes and just have nature and the real, as we say, the real world, quote unquote, real world around us. This will gets me in the mood, or I really feel it. But the physical writing itself, I would need to be in private in my room probably.
I can understand that. Now, is there a particular? Have you found that there's a particular time of day where you're more productive? Like, I know that I'm not necessarily a morning person, meaning I need to have my cup of coffee before I can really kind of get going. But there are many times where when I'm writing or creating, 1 a.m. or 2 a.m., I may get the epiphany and I go for it. Did you find that there was any particular time of day that worked best for you?
Yes. For me, I am a night owl, but that might also just be the college student in me talking. I do find that I'm more
right.
Yeah, I think I am just generally more productive in the evening / late night, but that's just because that's when I happen to find some free time and also be alone. So it's just a coincidence. But I guess in one word, I would say the evening.
Gotcha. Now, for so many people, we have a definition of what it means to be successful in whatever we do, whatever industry we're in. You ask someone randomly, what does success look like? And they have an answer for that. But for authors, it may be a little bit different, because I ask the question this way: what does literary success look like to you? Is it one book, 1,000 books, 1,000,000 books? Is it just someone coming up and saying, I love your work? What's literary success for you?
I would say that literary success is putting yourself out there no matter what. And if there's an idea that you're holding back on, just let it go. So it doesn't necessarily mean publication, although there's that side to it, of course. But I noticed there are so many talented writers out there, so many talented artists out there who just hold back on themselves. They second guess themselves. And to me, success is when you go and put yourself out there and you just go for it. Go the whole 9 yards.
I love that answer. It's when you're willing to just go for it, to put yourself out there. And, I think that you are so right, because for so many people, I think that they're not really afraid of writing. They're afraid of taking the first step. They're simply afraid of committing to being that, be it that it's a novelist or an essayist or a poet, or a poet. They're just so afraid to just commit to it that they keep kind of procrastinating. So I love that you have said that. And perhaps that is the nugget of wisdom that someone needed to hear today. Now, my last question for you is that you are a young woman and you have a bright future ahead of you. Do you feel that this is the first of many books for you? Is this the end of the line? What are your literary aspirations?
Yes, I, for the time being, will continue to write, whether that is creative writing, whether that is journalistic writing, whether that is in critiques. I know for a fact that I will continue to write because I'm still continuing my education. That might shape that by the year and see how it goes. And on top of that, I would say to anyone considering a literary path, a literary career, is to, even if you don't know what it is, just as myself, I still don't know what I want to do because I am still a student and I will continue to write, is to expect fear and rejection along the way. And I think that's the primary thing that we have to keep in mind, because I cannot answer that in a black or white response, but I would say that as long as I would expect rejection and failure, and that it's not going to be a one-time event, that it's a continued process that evolves over time, that my writing will unfold itself over time and along the way. Because some of us, we think that successful people have found a way around these obstacles, like rejection, like failure. But the thing is, what's really going on is successful people, whether you're a writer or not, they strive and push themselves regardless of oncoming obstacles. So regardless of what I will end up doing, I'll just do what I know best right for now and just go with it.
I love it. I love it. Nadia, thank you so much for spending time with me today. I think that you are definitely going to inspire someone to get out there and write that book. I love it. So my last question or last mention or reminder, and that is, if you could please one more time remind everyone, what is the title of your book, where can we get a copy, and how do we stay in contact with you?
Yes. The title of my book is Vigilant Mind, Poems and Other Shorts. Our readers can find it in Barnes & Noble, Amazon, Goodreads, sites like eBay. Vigilant Mind is available in softcover and ebook. People can follow me on my Facebook page, Nadia Boujelloun.
I love it. Nadia Boujelloun, thank you so much for being on the show with me today.
Thank you, Dr. Angela.
And listeners, thank you as well for spending some time with us. We hope that we have enlightened, inspired, and empowered you to be your best self today. As always, may the Lord continue to shine His face upon you. May you receive His grace and His mercy in all that you do. Until next time, everyone, be blessed in the Lord. Bye-bye.